Welcome to the Art of Healing podcast, the podcast that is dedicated to helping you connect with your mind, body, and spirit. This is Charlize, physician and Reiki master, and thank you so much for joining me. I would like to remind you that although I'm a physician, the information you receive in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. You can find my full disclaimer at my website, www.healingartshealthandwellness.com. If you like what you hear on this podcast, sign up for my weekly newsletter. Check your show notes for more information and for the link to sign up. Thank you. Hello, and welcome back to the Art of Healing podcast. This is Charlize. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, I hope wherever you're listening, you are well. If you are driving, I hope you're being safe. If you are at work, I hope it's a happy, productive day. If you're at home, I hope you're happy and well. So this podcast episode is meditation to improve focus. And in particular, I wanted to discuss a diagnosis that is likely growing in frequency, unfortunately, growing in intensity. And then I want to touch on how meditation can help all of us focus. So what does it mean if you have trouble focusing? What does that actually mean? And when is it actually a diagnosis? When is it actually a problem? So I'm finding that in my practice, and I think many listeners probably know that I am a practicing physician, that more individuals seem to be coming in to discuss trouble focusing on task, trouble focusing at work, just significant issues that are impacting their life and their productivity. And I think being human, we all have times that we have trouble focusing. Absolutely. That's just part of the human condition. So the way that I interpret trouble focusing in myself is, for instance, when it is time for me to complete, I find the most significant trouble focusing when it's time to complete a task that I just don't want to do. So in my medical practice, it's probably going to be administrative work, paperwork. In my home practice, it's probably going to be managing bills, managing the things that I perceive aren't fun and they don't have like an immediate reward. So it's going to be hard to focus on them, but they have to be done. They're necessary. So I think we all have tasks in parts of our days or parts of our nights that we can't wait to get to. You can't wait to look forward to them. And there are some things that are absolutely necessary. They're just not fun, but you just got to do them. And that's where our ability to focus, really, we need that, where there's not an immediate reward. We've got to do this thing. So how do we make this happen? I definitely find in myself that if I haven't slept well, I will definitely have trouble focusing. I definitely know and am learning to work with my own energy more, that there are certain times a day where a focus is not available to me. So as I'm deciding what tasks need to be done, there are some tasks that there are certain times a day. I am a morning person. I function best in the morning. Late afternoons, usually about the time when I'm transitioning to work and home, my focus is gone. And so over the years, I've decided those are hours of the days that, unless it's absolutely, something that has to be done, not necessarily so much with my work, working with patients is stimulating. So one thing I'll say is when you're working in patient care, or I personally find that I don't have trouble focusing on patients because of the nature of the work. So that I never worry about. But it's those little task, administrative things, little things that they don't necessarily be done right this minute. So I can and I have I've been practicing for almost 15 years. So some things I know they can wait a little bit until my brain's a little bit brighter and a little bit more awake, got a little bit more oxygen flow going to the brain. So, oh, and also I should mention to you readers, I like to read, and suspect many of you do, and I'm listening to a book on Audible that, and I'm still just, probably a little bit, maybe not even halfway through it, but Daniel H. Pink, When, The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing. Listening to this book right now also is helping me to understand that for many of us, there are going to be times a day where your productivity and performance are peak, and then times that they're not. So when we're trying to decide if we have trouble focusing, that's something to consider, is looking at what you do, what must be done, when it has to be done, how it must be done. So it may be that you're having trouble focusing on a task that doesn't give you a bunch of rewards. You're doing the task at the wrong time of day. So possibly, can that be done at a different time of day? Maybe. And then your approach even to the task. Maybe there is some reward to the task that you've just sort of forgotten about. So, of course, trouble focusing, is it just a lifestyle? Is it just your schedule? This is different from the clinical diagnosis of ADHD or ADD. So, of course, patients are approaching me because they are concerned that they have ADHD or ADD. Now, there is a disclaimer at the beginning of every podcast, and at this point, I would like to reaffirm that disclaimer that this is just educational purposes. This isn't offering any sort of diagnosis. And also to reaffirm that I am not a psychiatrist. I am an internal medicine doctor. So this topic I am increasingly having to learn about in my own practice, because many patients are starting to feel pressure and they're questioning if they have a clinical diagnosis of ADD or ADHD. And I do often remind patients that when it comes to diagnosis of a psychiatric nature, there is a whole specialty of specialists that do this just for a living. And so I don't take it lightly. And although I can do some of the initial assessments, this is a point, and especially when patients approach me, I do prefer they see a psychiatrist. So ADHD is remarkable for a combination of inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity, and symptoms that affect at least two domains of that person's life. And those domains are work, home, or relationships. So the resources I have available, because being a clinical practice, I do have to lean on clinical documentations, tell me that this disorder is primarily developmental. So it's most prevalent in childhood. However, there's been some question and some concern, and I believe some ongoing research, but I'm going to be frank, I have not tapped into much of that research, simply just because I don't have the time at this point. But the increasing frequency of diagnosis in adulthood is happening, and many adults being concerned they weren't diagnosed appropriately as children. So trouble focusing, possibly because of lifestyle, the task required a number of measures. That's something that can probably be managed just with some lifestyle change. I've been reading what some psychiatrists say and how they offer some treatment, as well as some psychologists. And I am seeing quite a few that mention that cognitive behavioral therapy is very, very helpful for a possible diagnosis of ADD or ADHD. Of course, many individuals are seeking medication. Being an internal medicine practice, medications are frequently prescribed. So, medications, are they helpful? Will every patient need them? And I'm going to stop there because I don't believe every patient needs medication treatment. Even if the diagnosis is finally made by a qualified psychiatrist of ADD or ADHD, I'm a firm believer that there can be things that can be done to help with some of those symptoms. Or even if medications are pursued, I still think some psychological assistance, some cognitive behavioral therapy, some lifestyle modification, and the topics of my content, I haven't quite broached them yet, but we will be approaching the nutrition so that you make sure you're consuming a high quality diet that doesn't create sugar spikes, that doesn't raise your norepinephrine or epinephrine levels inappropriately. So a good high quality functional medicine type diet to support your thinking. So we've got focus, maybe just as an issue of lifestyle, then possibly the clinical diagnosis, which of course requires, I would strongly recommend evaluation by a psychiatrist. So at some point, and as I'd mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, we all have trouble with our focus because that is human conditioning. I mean, that's part of just being human. That and I'll tell my patients this, that of all the living species on this planet, we have a pretty interesting position that we've positions ourselves as pretty much an apex predator. We did it with our brains. We can outthink most species on the planet. But probably we've done this at the expense of having a nervous system that's going to lean towards being overactive, that's always looking and seeking patterns that may not be there. So part of humanness, being human, is that there will be times you simply don't have much focus. Some people may be blessed with more focus than others, and that's a blessing. But that might even come at an expense because, for instance, if someone can focus on a task such as someone that can write for hours and hours and doesn't feel the need to get up because they're so inspired and they're so into their work, that's beautiful. Except what if they haven't walked? What if they haven't gotten any steps? They haven't used their cardiovascular system. They haven't used their muscular system. They haven't been moving oxygen very well because they're not challenging the body. So of course there's balance in everything, but I think you can understand what I'm saying. But things that are going to worsen your focus. So no matter where you might be in this issue, if you're wondering if you have a clinical diagnosis that maybe was missed as a child, or if maybe you just have a lifestyle that's not really supporting you, there's schedules and habits and external factors that are sort of interrupting where you feel you could be more productive. So one of the factors, of course, is screen time on screens. Unfortunately, this plagues all of us, but, we've all shifted towards a lifestyle of, so much of our content and our interactions and our lives are online. And there can be many blessings behind that. But of course, just the screen time likely disrupts your focus. Definitely too much screen time, especially late in the evening, is going to disrupt your sleep. I really don't know of anyone that's able to look at a computer screen or look at a phone screen without having their sleep interrupted. There are blue blockers and blue screen filters on your PC, on your on your computer and on your phone. But we as humans can't take on too much light the hours before sleep because your pineal gland will not understand that it's time to produce melatonin and that it's time to sleep. So definitely too much screen time will disrupt your overall brain's performance. I have not looked up the studies exactly yet, so I can share my own feelings about this, but and because I do have the blessing in my practice of I do get to work with younger individuals. I do have patients that are younger adults that social media and the nature of the news feeds of social media can alter your brain's patterns of focus so that your brain starts to lean towards more of a rapid fire, high reward system, and your brain sort of loses that modeling of the desire to sit and read a 1 or 2 paragraphs or a chapter because your brain's sort of used to a constant stream of information. The necessities of social media, do we need it? Where does it fit in our lives? That's a difficult question. I've been really blessed in my own practice that I've had some of my younger patients educate me on the topic of social media as an addiction and ways to manage that. And I've actually had to lean on some of my patients that are in their late teens, early 20s that have, taught me that, this is what it can do. This is what I'm noticing. And then they've, reflected to me the effects that it's had on their mood and especially their focus. In my own life, because I'm an older individual, been in practice for nearly 15 years and I don't have kids. I've had to really ask them quite, frequently, like, oh, how, so this is what social media means to you. Because for my generation, I don't know that it has so much importance. I'll say for me, because there were times in my life then it didn't exist and it did exist. So I don't probably tune in as much. So I had mentioned also in the beginning, we were discussing just, what does it mean to have trouble focusing, lifestyle. So when my patients are discussing with me, these symptoms, and we're trying to parse out if they're having trouble indeed among multiple areas of their life, one of the things I'll ask them is, what does your schedule look like? And that's where it can get pretty interesting because for able-bodied adult humans who are capable of multiple tasks and being extremely productive, who are sandwiched, raising children or grandchildren, caring for parents or grandparents, may have responsibilities towards extended family on top of work, and then maybe trying to socialize. That's where it can get really interesting because when we start to look at someone's schedule, if they have to hit the ground running at 7 a.m. and they don't stop all day and they go until 10 p.m. at night, they throw themselves in the bed and they're tired and they can't sleep. And if you see where it's going with this, that if your average day, if it actually looks like every minute of your average day is scheduled or structured, you got a problem. And I know this sounds a little bit harsh, but I can say this because honestly, because I treat a lot of patients. And if it does look like every moment of your day is scheduled or structured, then it is time to take a step back, to do an audit, and really start to figure out which of those tasks, obligations, meetings, appointments, activities are necessary, what must be done, what is it time to prune or cut from your schedule. Because although, again, we as humans and are, able-bodied, multifunctional, according to the author Richard Weber and other metaphysical authors, we are multidimensional. We can get a lot done. That doesn't mean you gotta do it all the time. No, it does not mean you need to be doing something all the time. So, however you keep your schedule, if you're thinking, oh gosh, I can't focus. So I would just maybe tell you, one way is either if you keep a schedule, maybe start looking at it, or maybe just quiz yourself on like, what does a Wednesday look like? And look at what comes up every Wednesday and start to make a list of it. And then you can step back. The question I typically will ask my patients is, okay, for each individual task, if this doesn't get done, I need you to write down the number of people that will die if this task doesn't get done. I know that sounds harsh, but the reason why I put it that way is that task that you probably perceive as so very important, is it always so very important, particularly if you've gotten sort of painted yourself into a hole with having every moment of your day scheduled. So if you're having symptoms, you're not feeling well, you're not focusing, and you're looking at those tasks and you are piecing out each one, and you discover some of them really aren't so important. Maybe you've decided they're important, or maybe you've placed so much importance on them, the others around you have decided they're important. But it may turn out that task isn't needed. It's not necessary. It won't hurt anyone if you drop it. Matter of fact, maybe you just should drop it. So, I mean, of course, it sounds so harsh, but I do question patients that way because by the time they're telling me, I know their stress levels are really high. And because of, like their position in life as family leader or maybe leader at work, I understand that they are trying to feel all their responsibilities, but someone has to sort of offer them permission that something you're going to fail at. So we're going to let something go. We're going to purposely fail and let this thing go and let it die. So it may be something like, this memo that I feel like I've got to send out to everyone. Well, if no one's reading it and you hate writing it and you're getting up at 6:30 in the morning to do it and it's not effective anyway, if you don't write the memo, who is going to suffer immense harm if you don't do it? And at that point, it may be time to cut it if we can get you some time back for yourself. And of course, many patients who are wondering if they need treatment or questioning if they need treatment, most of the prescriptions for ADD or ADHD after the clinical diagnosis has been made are stimulants. However, many of us consume stimulants in the form of teas or coffee on a regular basis. Now, there are a whole bunch of studies on the health benefits of tea. I did a talk on it many years ago, especially green tea. And there's some studies that show that coffee has some health benefits, keeps the liver healthy and the nervous system healthy, but all things in moderation. So we don't want to necessarily be relying on these in the afternoon or the evening if you sleep at night, or if you are work overnight, sort of the same deal. If you may consume your stimulants before your shift that night, but you don't want to be doing those too close to your bedtime. And if you find you're consuming a lot of them, this may be impacting your nervous system in ways that are not supporting your focus, and it may actually be time to back off. So one of the recommendations that I frequently offer, and of course, if you're a listener, you know that I love to discuss meditation as an activity, as a habit, as a healing modality, one of my favorites. So, and I will actually advise almost every patient that no matter where you are on the spectrum, maybe you're overscheduled, trouble focusing, maybe you're tired because it's just time for a break because you're suffering from burnout. There is a podcast several months back where a guest and I, Brandy Gibson, and I discuss burnout. So maybe there's some factors that you can't control. But can meditation play a role? Absolutely. So in my own daily runnings and things, and when I'm in practice, and even like when I'm off work, So because I've learned from the book that I mentioned before by Daniel H. P. Gwynn, The Science of Perfect Timing, I believe I'm what's called a lark. I think I'm an early lark. So I know that myself, I am very productive and I'm the most hopeful and happiest in the mornings. Late mornings, I can kind of maintain, but afternoon, I can feel myself wanting to slow down. And definitely by evening, I must slow down. But during my day, if there's a quiet moment, I think catching 5 minutes of breath work, 5 minutes of a body scan, 5 minutes of, I like to do my breath work meditation. I'll do a body scan. Or if I have a little bit more time, I'll do a 9-minute Reiki session. And I think some of you listeners know, of course, I'm a Reiki master, in which I just perform Reiki on my head, my heart, and my belly. And I'll do that even on a really good day where I'm feeling like very focused. I will still try to find a break if I can in between patients, or even like if I'm leaving work, to let the circuits of the brain just relax. If you're considering if meditation can help, and especially if you're thinking, well, I can't focus, I really can't sit still, so how would I do that? I would definitely say meditations you may want to look out for. Anything that focuses on the breath. So most of your really popular meditation apps all have breath work meditations. Anything that focuses on the body, and I'd mentioned the body scan meditation, and that's basically where you're taking your focus to different parts of your body. You don't do anything fancy, you just acknowledge that it's there. And the learning to observe your thoughts. So there should be a number of meditations in which you would settle into your body with some breath work, and then you take a few minutes to actually gather all of the thoughts that are racing through your head, and then you observe them. So, and there's probably far more, but those are from my student perspective. I would try to focus on those three. And I'd always advise my patients, my Reiki clients, that if you are dealing with any issue, but particularly with focus, just try 5 minutes. And what I'll tell you is that in that 5 minutes, it may feel like it doesn't work. But if you will come back every day, I think you'll find some benefit. And there's no sacrifice in that 5 minutes. There's definitely no sacrifice in taking away 5 minutes of your day. If you have more time to devote, perfect. I think some meditation instructors would recommend certain times of day to meditate. I would just say when you can. If it's in the morning, perfect. If it's at lunch, beautiful. If it's at bedtime, that's perfect. And I often frequently recommend that if you notice that things are going too fast, starting to, and I need to do something, it may be that you have to learn to meditate in your car before you go into work, or you may have to take a few minutes in the bathroom. 3 minutes in the bathroom never inconveniences anyone. But if you open your mind to getting in touch with yourself that way, you'll find that your focus will start to come back to you. And I think the quietness that you start to go in your brain will definitely realign you with what's necessary in your life. So as always, thank you so much for joining me. When I'm creating these podcasts, I always think they're going to be really short, because I'm actually naturally an introvert. And I'm surprised at this topic, which, and I mentioned my disclaimer before, I am not an expert in focus, ADD or ADHD, but I'm surprised that this podcast turned out to be so long, because it's a topic. I think it's important. It's very important. As always, I'm Charlize. This is the Art of Healing podcast. I have so much gratitude for you spending your time with me today. If you are listening and you are wanting to take some steps, if you're see your path of meditation ahead and you want to take the first step, my book, The 21-Day Meditation Journey, is available on Amazon. It was a joy to create this book. I just love it. It's short, it's simple, and it could definitely be part of your toolbook. You can get an ebook, which you could actually have on your phone, which you could take with you, or you can order a print copy. And it's nice and compact, and you can take along with you if you're thinking you want to start some meditation. You're not sure where. That's definitely a place to start. I also have a course that goes along with it, which if you visit my website, healingartshealthandwellness.com, is available. So thank you all so much for listening, and I will be in touch next week. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Art of Healing podcast. Once again, this is Charlize. You can find out more about me at www.healingartshealthandwellness.com. Did you know I have a blog as well as online courses? Check your show notes to sign up for more information about healing arts, health, and wellness. Thank you. Please feel free to share this episode with your friends, family, and loved ones.